Hello and welcome everyone. I'm your host, Ali, co-founder of Node. Our goal with this series, as you know, is to share the perspectives on the changing digital landscape of our industry. We have another amazing guest with us today. I can't wait for you guys to meet her. I'm thrilled to welcome Megan Gluth-Bohan, who embodies the incredible journeys and contributions of women in our industry. She is CEO and owner of Catalynt, a 100% woman-owned business as of 2021, and one of the largest women-owned suppliers of raw materials and ingredients in North America. As CEO, Meg has been recognized by Puget Sound Business Journal's 40 Under 40, NACD Distributor of the Year, Middle Market Fast 50, EY Entrepreneur of the Year, and so much more. Meg, thanks so much for making the time. Maybe before we jump into today's conversation, anything else about your background or Catalent that you'd like to share?
No, I think you pretty much gave everybody the 30,000 foot quick and dirty. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to jump in.
Right. Uh, First off, like your background is a little bit different than most executives in our space. Many of them have kind of grown up in the chemical space. They're probably chemical engineers, but you graduated from law school and first started, I believe, as general counsel. I'd love to hear more about your path and how you got into the role that you're currently in.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. I started off as an attorney, and in fact an attorney in the Midwest. I was born and raised in the Midwest, and I went to both college and law school in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and was practicing law in Minneapolis before I decided to make the move to the West Coast. At the time that I did that, I asked a law school colleague of mine if he knew anyone in Seattle. I was interviewing with some firms in Seattle, and I kind of wanted to know sort of the vibe, if you will, of the law firms. And he said, "I don't, but my wife used to work for this guy in Seattle, and he has some sort of chemical distribution company or something like that." He said, "I don't know if he knows lawyers, but he's pretty well connected. So why don't you talk to him and see if he knows a little bit about these firms?" And that's how I met Tony Ridnell, who is the man who founded the original founder of the company that at that time was called TRI, which is where I started. And I met him in his office, and we sat down and had just a brief conversation, kind of just more social than anything else. Though it's funny, it's noted that this is the West Coast, right? So he's in his office in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, and I roll in a full suit because I came from Minnesota law firms where like casual Friday meant you could take your jacket off for a little bit in the afternoon or whatever. So we were sort of a mismatched pair. I left his office, and he sent me an email after I left, just saying, "Hey, would you tell me a little bit?" At this time, when I met him, he said, "Will you tell me a little bit about the Affordable Care Act?" And I wrote him back this email. I said, "That's a complex piece of legislation, and I can give you kind of a quick and dirty summary of that. But I will just say this: if you want anybody good to work for you, you have to give them health insurance. Have a good day. Thanks for your time." And he picked up the phone and called me and offered me a job. And he just said, "You just say stuff like it needs to be said. So you want to come work here?" And I was like, "I don't know if you guys need a general counsel. Like, I don't really know how this is going to work." But I said, "Sure," like because that's just sort of where I was at in my life. I was like, "Okay, I can do this." And I started for TRI, which at that time had been in business for about maybe 20 years, and had grown from something he started in his bedroom to a company of decent size. And I started, like I said, as general counsel. I was writing contracts. I was sort of tightening up policy, procedure, sort of what you do, I guess, in your first initial work there. And I fell in love with the business. And I fell in love with the speed of what was happening and the intricacies and the fact that whether or not there are pirates in a certain sea matters to whether you can make toothpaste, and whether there's rainfall in Panama affects whether you can make shampoo. And I just thought this was cool. And I slowly started to just become more involved in all aspects of the business. And was promoted relatively quickly to the president. And then I became the CEO. And then he and I sort of reached a point where he was at a season of his life where he was getting ready to exit, wanted to retire and be done. And I was sort of ready for anything, ready to start.
Mm.
And so it's a super long story that I'll just say very quickly. We originally, I purchased a majority of the business from him. And then a global pandemic hit very quickly soon thereafter, which was sort of interesting. And he decided not to sort of extend the runway for his retirement. He retired earlier than he thought he would. And I went ahead and bought the rest of it. So since 2021, I've been 100% owner of this business. Since that time, we've doubled our size in terms of revenue uh, and also volume, which is probably most important metric for me, and made two acquisitions. And so where we sit today as Catalynt is not the company I started working for, but it certainly um, has amazing roots and now a life of its own.
Wow, congrats. I didn't
Thanks.
know that entire backstory. That is a fantastic story. Who would have thought?
Certainly not me. Certainly not me.
Let's shift topics a little bit and talk about tech.
Yeah,
So on your About Us section of your website, you state something that caught our eye, which is that you started, formally implementing technology like ERP and CRM back in 2002, which is, for our industry, quite early to say the least. Was this part of the fabric of the organization to start to, be early adopters of, pretty commonplace tech?
for sure. It was commonplace, I think, for a lot of the business world at that time. Certainly, though, not in our industry. And no disrespect to our industry whatsoever, but it does tend to, I think, have a slower timeline for tech than a lot of other industries. You have to remember that we're headquartered in the Seattle area. And so at that time, I didn't work for the company, obviously, at that time, but there was a lot of influence and a lot of sort of commingling with people who were working at Amazon and people who were working for Microsoft, and ultimately Microsoft's CRM and ERP program is what this company adopted. Uh, and that was sort of revolutionary, frankly. The idea that you would inject technology into your business in any way, shape, or form, and trust technology sort of with a sort of a task in your business. Super reflective of sort of the innovative spirit and sort of kind of that idea to be dynamic in this business that remains today. But that was one of the first ways to do it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what your adoption of CRM was like, so many years ago,
I
but
heard it
it's
was terrible.
still, yeah, there's still a lot of distributors in our market that haven't adopted customer-facing tech, starting with CRM. And, every time I hear stories like that, I always just have to like internalize a little bit and be like, wow, like how does this even work? But it's always amazing to me that there's these hundreds of millions, sometimes billion-dollar organizations that are running on no infrastructure. It is quite remarkable. But
Th-
congrats on
Thank you.
being, so early. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the changing expectations of customers in our space. I think starting with the pandemic, things started to shift a little bit. I think the demographics, especially on the buy side, has gone down. And I think those expectations are just going to continue to accelerate in terms of being able to self-serve, being able to, find information quickly, being able to get faster answers from their suppliers and all of those sort of things. What are some of the opportunities that you see at Catalent when it comes to digital, specifically around customer-facing initiatives?
Sure, sure. I look at digital and any kind of tech investment because that's what it is for me. It's a capex or an investment as sort of adding a teammate to the team. And I think that's what's really important for people in our industry to understand is that this is not going to be a space. We learned that in the pandemic and we've learned it since where you can replace humanity, can replace the human element. I have 1,000 stories of why that even when we start somebody in a more tech way, eventually they just pick up the phone and call because
Yeah.
at the end of the day in our business there's a lot of highly technical work being done and there's a lot of trial and error being done and we now ourselves are manufacturers at our plant in Chicago and I can just tell you firsthand like some things has to get worked out like that, but adding the concept of a front facing customer tech experience, whether it's something as simple, and maybe it's not simple, but like giving them the opportunity to be tracking in real time where a container is, if they are a customer that's getting a direct container shipment, which
Yep.
increasingly less in my business, but it does happen. Gives them an opportunity to consult a teammate, the tech, at my company that can give them an answer that they don't need a human for.
Yeah.
And so I really look at that as a way to sort of diversify the workforce in a way. And maybe that's a different way of looking at it, but that's how we use it here. And that's the experience that I want for my customers, because I do have to maintain the understanding that they too want maybe a hybrid, but they certainly don't want us to lean hard in any one particular direction. And we have that. We have that direct feedback on that. We're
Yeah.
definitely responsive to that.
How about using tech as a differentiator to your supplier partners? Uh, yeah, tell me
Yeah.
about that.
My supplier partners get from me a lot of information. I feel that that's part of the supply relationship, and so the key thing that they get back from me is data, market intelligence, and things like that. So for us, the use of technology is key and instrumental in being able to put together the data that they need and be able to put together the reporting that they need and the information that they need. And so I can't have our team assemble that as quickly or as thoroughly or as accurately on their own as I can by using
Yeah,
technology, and we
yeah,
use it that way.
got it. As you know, the world today is a little bit different from 2021 and maybe 2022.
Yeah.
There are some headwinds.
Mhm.
And in times like these, there's always this balance of, short-term sort of results and expectations versus like long-term investments. And just because we talk to so many distributors and producers, like it's pretty binary. There's some leaders that um, lean one way or another, right? They either say, look, this is my strategy and we're going to continue investing. I don't care what the short term's like. We've seen these cycles before. And there's others that are like, we're cutting costs and delaying initiatives and well, let's revisit in 2025. And there's no right answer.
Yeah.
But where do you kind of sit on that spectrum?
I'm probably sitting in a combination of both spots. I'm
Yeah.
definitely being a lot more attentive to making investments, and I'm very attentive to what my purpose is in making an investment. I'm also very committed to what my purpose is, and I'm very committed to the strategy I've set. I share the sentiment that all business is always on a cycle, whether it's the chemical business or anything else. And so I use these times and these moments, and the way I run my business is so that I have a little bit of a war chest to do that, frankly, when things go slow.
Mhm.
Um, that I can use that time then to hone my craft so that when my team is back out on the field doing a really, really good time, we're that much better. And so you do have to have some discernment. You do have to have some wisdom around the resources that you are deploying and the capital you're deploying. But I think in a time like this, doing so is smart as long as it achieves that strategy that you're setting, that I personally believe should not waver based on an economic cycle. Now, if we were to see a fundamental shift in the entire sort of market order and the way things work, then I might do something different. But I feel that at this moment in time, we're in nothing more than a completely explainable and predictable cycle of the business.
Yeah, I in my downtime for some reason find pleasure in reading, annual reports.
Yeah,
And a lot
I
of
feel
them
you.
it's kind of it's a weird obsession. And there's a lot of them that's getting released right now, and I really enjoy kind of reading the letters from the CEOs to their shareholders. And I would say for the most part, nobody's really predicting a turnaround in 24, but they're hopeful for 25, 26. But like even with that, I mean, things change and investments, especially in tech from our perspective, is one of these things that like you just are a firm believer you're not. And it's not like you're going to get a quarter type ROI. It's for the long term and it's for the differentiation of your business towards your suppliers and customers. And one thing I've certainly seen is especially in distribution, the term digital is used way more in these reports than it ever has been. Like if you just, search for the word digital, like the number of times it's showing up in these reports, I've never seen anything like it before.
Mhm.
So it's exciting. It's exciting to
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Um, any words of encouragement you want to share for your employees, especially those that are maybe working on some of these initiatives?
Yeah, I just say keep going. Like I think I think to your point, like you have to be looking forward. If you're in my chair at an organization, it's your job to be. I always say that I have to play chess, even if everybody else at the table needs to play checkers. And I think that for people who are planning and looking and strategizing for how they think about anything digital at their company, I think that's a chess game, particularly in our industry. There are some people that need to understand that you might be the first to the mark at some of these races, but if it's within your strategy and it's part of your chess game, then you need to continue rolling towards that. And I think my encouragement is just keep going with that. Like you clearly have a knowing about why it's on your board in the first place. Keep
Yeah,
going.
amazing. Look, I love your background and thank you so much for sharing some of that and it should be celebrated and on
Thanks.
that note, in celebration of Women's History Month, I want to be able to reflect a little bit. I mean, you've had an interesting sort of path to where you are today, for someone that didn't really know what even chemical distribution was to now leading a good sized organization. I mean, it's incredible, and I'm sure it's an inspiration to a lot of women that are watching this right now. What stamp do you hope to have on, the future generations of women in this industry?
Golly, that's a loaded
It's a
question.
heavy question. Sorry about that.
I hope that I will leave behind a mark of authenticity, of being who we are, and never wishing. There's a quote: "Never wish to be anything but what you are, and to be that perfectly." And I hope that women that come after me will do that. They'll do this, whatever this is for them in this space, in their own way, in a way that feels authentic and unique to them and true to them, and that will become part of sort of the normal mainstream gift to the business world, is the different way that women lead and the different voice that we bring. I certainly wouldn't want it to be at odds, in opposition, or in any animus towards my male colleagues, because I actually adore them too. So um, but I hope we can add our voices to this in a way that feels really authentic, and then obviously really enriching to the environment as a whole.
Yeah, indeed. So many people don't know that this industry even exists. It's one of these, it's just like hiding in plain sight.
That's right.
But it's such a cool space, and I love to hear folks' background that have never sort of engaged with this market and come in here and their brains go wild because it's like, oh my gosh, like this industry enables everything around us.
That's right. That's right.
And I wish people could hear that story more, and because I think the demographics in our industry would change considerably if people understood it better.
Absolutely.
Meg, look, thank you for your insights. Everyone loves these sort of informal conversations, especially from folks like you that are helping shape the industry. Thank you for everything you've done to move this space forward. I can't wait to see, where you take Catalent next.
Thanks so much. It's been awesome talking to you.
Indeed. Have a great one.
You too.